idea that is held truth, that is considered to be truth by majority of the people, but there may be two or three people who may have a dissenting opinion. So they debate, discuss all the good things of the thesis, all the good things of antithesis come together, cumulatively become the synthesis. Until and unless a synthesis is absolutely accepted by everybody with no contradictions, this movement keeps on continuing. This concept of dialectics was taken by Hegel, all right, to explain movement in history. But Hegel changed it, revised it for his own good. And he gave up three laws of dialectics, that is, unity of opposites. I told you, life, death, happiness, sadness, opposites who are always together. Negation of negation, meaning the past doesn't get eliminated, it just gets negated. Now the present takes more importance. So simplistically put, higher truth emerges, lower truth goes behind. Okay, so it gets negated there, its importance starts diminishing. All right, quantity changes lead into quality changes is basically what Karl Marx talks about revolution. All right, so Hegel was basically an idealist who believed that state was the march of God on earth. He actually utilized the entire state. All right, he said if man has to be happy, he's going to be the happiest only when he's under a state. Karl Marx is right opposite. Karl Marx considered state to be an exploitative organ in hands of the capitalist class. Okay, he actually called the state an exploitative or an executive committee of the capitalist class. So he felt that okay, state is just there to protect the interest of the capitalist class. All right, so that is where they diverge. Marx used only Hegel's three laws of dialectics to explain why socialism is going to come. All right. So in Unity of Opposite, he says there is capitalism. Of course, there is going to be an antithesis called socialism. Negation of negation, because socialism is a higher truth, it's taking care of majority of the people, that is the working class people. It is definitely the higher truth, so it will survive. It will be victorious, and capitalism will get negated. And how will the quantity change into quality? Karl Marx says simple, violent struggle, that is revolution. A class struggle will happen, capitalists will be overthrown, and a socialist society is established. And after some time, a communist society will be established. So how does he explain everything? Through historical materialism. Okay, everything. Materialism, I told you, means material gains. All right, and historical is history. So you're looking at everything, economic relations from history point of view. All right, so then he says, listen, in a society, there is an economic base, the foundation on which superstructures are based. Those superstructures can be your state, that's your political society, it can be your religion, it can be your church, it can be your school, it can be your media, it can be your judiciary. All the superstructures are basically decided by your economic base. So what is your economic base consist of? It consists of the mode of productions, which can be divided into forces of productions and relations of productions. Forces of productions are further divided into means of productions. So what are the means? Land, labor, organization or an enterprise, and capital. And the people who own this become the capitalist class. So they are the people who actually decide how the political state as well as legal structures will be, because they are the ones who are giving money. All right, they're the ones who are generating capital. But because not everybody can be capitalist, majority people are going to be working class. They are going to be employed by this capitalist on living or subsistence wages. All right, so that the people who control, or the forces of production or the means of productions, the ones who are controlling this, okay, who are controlling land, labor, organization and capital, are the ones who decide the relations of productions. So how is the relation of productions? Certain people own the means of productions like the capitalist class, and certain people or the majority people are employed by them. So the relations of productions are divided into two antagonistic classes. One is owners of social means of production, that's the capitalist class. In Marxian philosophy we call it the bourgeois class. All right, and the opposite of it is the working class, those who are working on wages in the industries established by the capitalist class. They are called the proletariat class. So you can either call them haves and have not, or bourgeois and proletariat class. So everything according to Marx, economics is the base of your society, economics is the base of your state, economics is also the base of your relationship that you see amongst the classes in your nation. So finally, what does he say? He says, look, I'm not the one creating it. Look at the history. History has been the same. Okay, history has been the same. There was a first stage, primitive communism, where there was only hunting, food gathering, no property. So everybody was happy. And see, nobody owned anything, so no classes emerged. Everything was fine. Everybody was equal. All right. But slowly, 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 what happened? Domestic agriculture started, animal husbandry started, concept of private property started coming up, and which led to class structure, wherein now again two antagonistic classes were present under slave system: the masters and the slaves. Masters who owned animal husbandry or had huge land for themselves, and the slaves who toiled on it. Okay, so because of this, two antagonistic classes were created: masters and slaves. But it did not stop here. History continued, movement in history continued. See, thesis has an antithesis, so new synthesis comes. That is, feudal system came up. The small agriculture now became large agricultural setup. Okay, so now landlords became more powerful. They became economically more powerful, politically also more powerful. So now the class division was landlords and serfs, again antagonistic. Okay, this finally, because of feudalism, people were tired of it. So started an ideology called liberalism. But liberalism, rather than sorting out the problems created by feudalism, increased it further, increased it tenfold, creating large scale industries and a more exploitative class of capitalists and the workers. And because of this exploitation of the workers by the capitalists, finally socialism would come, because it is the higher truth. Negation of negation will happen, and finally workers will overthrow the capitalist class and establish a socialist society. So this is what I taught you yesterday. All right. We'll stop here for a second. Class, the revision is done. Only thing I wanted to tell you is, see, in your chat box, all right, I have written the pages that you're supposed to read from OP Goba. The whatever I've written in my slides is enough. But for extra reading, all right, for diverse perspective of state, that is theory of state, as well as for ideology, I've written it in your chat box. I've given you the page numbers. All right. So you need to read only that much. Till now, all of you have understood. Shall I continue? Class, shall I continue? Mansi, Aditi? Okay, fine. Okay, now we'll continue with the next part. So capitalist system was also one of exploitations, like the slave system. This is what I told you here. Masters and slaves. All right. The monopoly of means of production in the hands of the ruling capitalist class, which led to actually creating a lot of exploitation. What are the means of production? I've told you, you have to buy hard these: land, labor, organization or enterprise, and capital. So, because complete power corrupts you completely, the same concept, monopoly happened. They were controlling land, they were controlling labor, they were controlling capital, they were controlling an organization because they owned it. All right. So, of course, there was a monopoly of smaller capitalist class who was exploiting majority of the worker class. So, daily labor and work of the workers was divided into two concepts. One was necessary labor, one was surplus labor. All right. What was a necessary labor? Necessary labor is performed by a worker during the day, producing value which, when sold, will cover his wages. Simplistically put, all right. I have already told you here that the capitalist class had established its monopoly on means of production. So they had a monopoly on the organization or the enterprise. Now that could be industry, it could be manufacturing industry, anything. All right. But the capitalist class is not going to come and work. All right. They are going to take the higher management decisions. So who is going to work there? The laborers are going to be working, and for that reason they're going to be paid wages. So capitalist class employs the worker class so that wages can be given to the workers so that they have their means of livelihood. All right. Plus the efforts, the labor that the workers put in will create an end product, which after selling, the profits will go to the capitalist class. So for capitalist class, it's a win-win situation. He's getting people to work for them. All right. Capitalist class is getting workers to work for them, as well as only paying them subsistence wages. Okay, only necessary wages were paid to them. Rest all the profits that came from the end products being sold in the markets went to capitalist class. So what happened? Capitalist class started becoming more richer and richer and richer, more influential too. All right. But the problem was that the workers, even if they were working for say 10 hours a day, they could not question it because their means of livelihood depended upon the wages paid by the capitalist class. So a worker, according to Marx, was putting in two type of efforts. First was necessary labor. Necessary labor is performed by the worker during the day, producing the value which when sold will cover his wages. A simple example, all right? You see benches, okay? The benches, for that you require woodcutters to cut the wood, then transport it to a small facility where the wood is stored, then it is transported to a factory. In the factory there will be workers or the carpenters who will make the transform the wood from normal wood to a bench. So who's putting that effort? Okay, the transformation of a wood from normal wood to a bench, that is your necessary labor, because a carpenter has to do that because his means of livelihood depend upon it. So this is the work that he does during the day that will cover his wages. So remember, creation of a bench by the carpenter is nothing but his necessary labor. So whatever he does, the efforts that he's putting in, he knows he's creating a value. This bench will be sold, and from the money that the bench selling gets the capitalist, his wages, the wages of the carpenter will be paid. So this is his necessary labor which he has to do, which he has to sell, okay, to get his wages. But Karl Marx said necessary labor is understood, but the worker also has to do something called as a surplus labor. Surplus labor is performed during the remainder of the day, producing value which, when sold, will cover the rent, interest, profit of the means of production, like land, organization, capital, and will go to the capitalist class. See, for a worker, say even if a capitalist has say something around 1000 workers and he's paying them say a monthly wage of say 200 rupees, all right, he doesn't have to sell lakhs of benches. Few benches sold also will cover the necessary labor or the wages of the workers. But the capitalist class does not think like that. He does not think about the workers or the fact that they are putting in more efforts and the wages are less. Capitalist class is only concerned with his own profits. All right, he wants to gain as much as profits as possible. So even if a particular worker only produce say 5 benches per day, his wages for the month will be taken care of. Capitalist class does not allow this. He says no, 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 produce 15. Why? Because the 5 benches production and their selling will cover the wages of the workers, but the extra 10 from each of the 1,000 workers, imagine, all right, extra 10 benches from each of the 1,000 workers, if they are sold, imagine how much more money comes back to the capitalist. So it is a form of exploitation. They are making the worker work for an inhuman amount of time at inhuman capacity, just so that profits are earned. So normal labor, the 5 benches if the worker created to cover his wages for a month was enough. But capitalist is not happy. Capitalist says no, 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 create more. The more you create, the more I can sell, the more money will come to me. Does he share the profits with the workers? No. The profits in form of rent, interest, etc. are taken by the capitalist class itself. See, rent is going to be on the land, all right? Interest and everything will be basically on whatever he has taken, the machinery, etc., etc. He may have rented. On that, he'll have to pay the interest. So once the rent is paid for the land, interest is paid for the machinery, all the extra money that has come from selling so many benches throughout an entire month with only minimal wages being given to the workers who created it, all the extra money, all the surplus money goes into the account of the capitalist class. All right. So what happens? Worker only gets minimal wages while maximum profits are taken by the capitalist class. So what happens? There is exploitation of workers and alienation from profits. I told you, capitalist class is only going to share wages with the workers. The money that he got from selling, or the money that the capitalist received from selling 5 benches of the workers per day, is the wages that he's going to give him. All right. But extra profits after paying the rent, interest, etc., will be taken by the capitalist class. He's not going to share that with the workers. So workers only get subsistence wages. All right. So basically, this is where the concept of surplus value comes in. Surplus value is a difference between the value a worker produces and the price paid to him in form of wages. I told you, from a normal wood, who gave it the final form of a bench? The worker did. Whose skill was it? The worker's skill. Who put in the labor? The worker did. Who gave it a final shape to the product? The worker did. But does he get profits for it? No. So that the fact that the profits are taken by or pocketed by the capitalist class is the concept of your surplus value. What is surplus value? Simplistically put, surplus value is nothing but selling price minus the cost price. For example, a bench, say the capitalist decides I'm going to sell the bench for 500 rupees, while the cost price for producing it, amount that he spent for making or transforming that wood into a bench, has only been 100 rupees. So imagine 500 rupees is the selling price for the bench, while the cost of creating that bench is only 100 rupees. 400 rupees profit behind every bench sold. So imagine how much profit is the capitalist class going to make. So this is the concept of surplus value. This is exactly the reason why Marxism is unhappy with the capitalist class. He says you're exploiting the workers. Laissez-faire or open market does not mean that you exploit the workers. All right. He says the worker is doing necessary labor to cover his wages. That means he's not getting anything free. He's putting in efforts. Plus, not just for necessary labor that is going to cover his wages, he's putting extra work, surplus labor to, to see to it that the capitalist makes as much profits as possible. And this surplus value or the surplus profits is nothing but the difference between the selling price of a product and the cost price of that product. Like I told you, selling price of a bench can be 500 rupees. Cost price for just creation of the bench, covering the wages of the workers, would be only 100 rupees. So 400 rupees per bench is pocketed by the capitalist class. Of course, they also have a lot of expenditure that they incur. They may have to pay the rent on the land. All right, they may have to pay the interest on the loans that they have taken, basically for machinery or whatever. But even after paying all the expenditure, the money that is left is enough to give him maximum profits, is enough to give the capitalist class more bargaining power. All right. So this is a concept of your surplus value. And surplus value is nothing but the profits and is definitely a cause of exploitation of the workers. The capitalist does not share his profits with the workers, and more the workers work, the more profits are earned by the capitalist class, and the gap between these classes keeps on rising. And finally, according to Marx says state is an instrument in the hands of the capitalist class. State is only supposed to do protection and defense under the capitalist class or under liberalism. So state is seeing, the people in the political authority are seeing that the workers are getting exploited. All right. The surplus value, that is the profit, is pocketed by the capitalist class, the rich class. That means they are becoming richer and richer, while laborers are becoming poorer and poorer. Still, the state is not doing anything. State's only work been given is basically only do the protection and the defense work. Nothing more than that. So state is silent. The political authority remains silent. It sees that, okay, there is an exploitation of the working class going on, but it doesn't do anything. Because who's going to pay the taxes for the state or to the state? The capitalist class is paying the taxes. So state becomes an instrument in the hands of a capitalist class. It becomes a silent observer, because under liberalism, state any which ways did not have any functions. It was a night watchman state. All right. It had only to maintain law and order. It had only to maintain protection and defense. Nothing more than that. So even if state is seeing the exploitation of the workers, it does not have the capacity, neither does it have the power to bring about a change, because it's a minimalistic state. It is a night watchman state. It's a necessary evil state. All right. So this concept that necessary labor and the surplus labor that the worker does, he works not only for 8 hours, he works for 10, 12, 13 hours. Okay, leaves no scope for his own personal life. He is the one who's creating a value of a product. From a wood, the transformation to a bench is done by the laborer. But what does he get? Not even recognition for his labor, not even profits are shared with him. Only particular amount of wages. That is going to be minimal wages. All right. Understand, because the exploited class, that is the worker class, is so much in number. If I refuse to work at say 100 rupees per day, there are going to be 10 other people ready to work at 100 rupees per day. So I can be fired. I cannot show my dissent. I cannot question the capitalist class, because I lose my job. I lose my means of livelihood. So the laborer also cannot say anything, because he has to earn the wages. He has to take care of his family. He has to take care of himself. All right. This wages that he is getting paid are nothing but his means of subsistence. So neither the state can say anything, neither the workers can say anything. So what happens? Capitalist class keeps on dominating, because the capitalist class is the base, the economic structure that decides the superstructures of a state. So finally, Karl Marx says one day, what will happen? All these working class people will understand that, listen, this is not our existential reality. We are not supposed to work for 13 hours only for minimal wages. We need something more. All right. So when they understand that, listen, I am being exploited. All right. The capitalist class, even if they are my employers, they are making me work more than required. All right. It may affect my health. It may affect my livelihood. It may affect my life also. All right. So this cannot continue. This has to stop one day or the other. This exploitation of the working class has to stop. And this is when this is going to happen when the concept of doctrine of class war comes in. This is going to happen when finally the worker realizes, okay, himself, that, listen, I am getting exploited and the state is doing nothing to stop my exploitation. It's neither making any changes, neither telling the capitalist class to increase the wages. Nothing. The state is just a silent observer. So neither the state is going to help us, capitalist class is definitely not going to help us. So what are we supposed to do? Help ourselves. Help ourselves. So how did this happen? How did this true consciousness develop? It developed because the class struggle concepts started getting ingrained in the minds of the workers. All right. They started realizing that, listen, this class struggle and this revolution is what is going to establish our rule. The capitalist class needs to be overthrown, because if the capitalist class continues, this exploitation of workers will continue again and again and again for generations and generations and generations without questioning. This is the true consciousness that starts developing in the working class. They start realizing it. And finally, it leads to the doctrine of class war. So that's what leads to Karl Marx saying the history of all hitherto existing societies is a history of class struggle. All right. So this is where he speaks about the class struggle. Remember, here in the starting, I told you that Marxism is a revolutionary doctrine. It's praxis. Okay, that means it's revolutionary. This revolutionary stuff is nothing but your doctrine of class war. That's why Karl Marx says history of all hitherto societies has been history of class struggle. See, he's already told you. Masters and slaves, landlords and serfs, capitalist and worker class, all of them have been antagonistic classes constantly fighting with each other. Okay, now before I start class war, class, have you understood the concept of surplus value? Just remember it is profits. Or you want me to revise it again with you? Kirtika, Aditya, Siddesh, Mansi, Akansha, Asif, Aditi. Be frank, okay, Himanshu. If you want me to repeat it, I can repeat it. I have no issues. Understood? Very good. It's very important, all right? All right. Okay, then I'll continue. Okay, great, great. I have a very smart bunch of students and I'm happy. Okay, now doctrine of class war. All right. If they ever ask you this as a short note, history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggle. Same thing has to be written. All right. The concept of class struggle is the nucleus of Marxism. Okay. It explains the dynamic of history and eventual abolition of the classes. I showed you history of masters and slaves, landlords and serfs, capitalists and workers. Can you see the last column here? Workers in power. There are no two antagonistic classes. This is what now we are going to talk about. There are no two antagonistic classes. How will that happen? How will workers come into power? Through the doctrine of class war. All right. So in a class society, there were two classes, exploiting class and the exploited class. Okay, now I want to read to you whatever is written in Opigoba. All right, on page number 35. Okay, in the concept of ideology, I've already put that in your chat box. All right, but I'm going to tell you the exact definitions of bourgeois and the proletariat class. Just listen to it. This is what we're talking about, the exploiting and the exploited class. The exploiting class is the bourgeois class. All right, there are two contending classes in modern capitalist society according to Marx. Angels noted that by bourgeois is meant a class of modern capitalists, the owners of means of social production and the employers of wage labor. I'll repeat, by bourgeois, we mean the class of modern capitalists who are owners of means of social production and employers of wage labor. Means of production, land, labor, organization, and capital. They are the owners of it, and they are the ones who are paying wages to the have-not classes. That is your bourgeois class. Okay. And by proletariat, we mean the class of modern wage laborers who, having no means of production of their own, are reduced to selling their labor power in order to live. This is what I taught you here. Necessary labor and surplus labor. So what is a proletariat class? Proletariat class is nothing but a class of modern wage laborers who, having no means of production of their own, are reduced to selling their labor power in order to live. The concept of your necessary labor and surplus labor. All right. Now, why is the word modern class used? Both capitalist as well as the worker or the proletariat class. The word modern is used because, please understand, socialism is a modern doctrine. All right, socialism is a modern doctrine because it was against liberalism. See, I've written it here. Socialism is a modern doctrine. That's why the classes are also modern, because ancient classes or the medieval classes will be these: slave system, feudal system of medieval, and the capitalist and socialist system will be modern classes. Okay, now that I've read this, let's come to your concept of doctrine of class war. Okay, so these classes carry on the struggle till, okay, in a class there will be two classes, exploiting class as well as exploited class, the bourgeois class and the proletariat class. These two classes will carry on the struggle till either of the two happens. A reconstruction of society happens, meaning the capitalist class is overthrown and a socialist society is established, or destruction of both the classes will happen. So either one class, that is the exploiting class, the bourgeois class, will be thrown out, or in a revolution either can happen. Bourgeois class is thrown out or both the classes will get destroyed because it's a violent revolution. All right, this is what Karl Marx says. So finally, Marx says that modern society hasn't done away with the class antagonism, rather established new methods of exploitation and new classes of exploitation. So from slave system, feudal system, capitalist system hasn't learned anything. All right, they are doing the same evils, practicing the same social and economic evils that slave system and the feudal system did in the ancient period or the medieval period. The bourgeois class and the proletariat class have inherently hostile interests. They're antagonistic. They are a thesis and an antithesis. So, of course, unity of opposites. All right. The capitalist class owns the means of production or social means of production. That is your land, labor, enterprise, or organization and capital. All right. Whereas the workers have only their labor to sell. I already told you this when I was reading those definitions. The worker earns lowest cost of for his labor, margin of subsistence, while the profits are enjoyed by the capitalist class. In the last slide, I told you about the surplus value concept. The lower strata of middle class, consisting of artisans, small shopkeepers, and small capitalists, also called as the petty bourgeois class, are thrown out of the markets and join the ranks of the proletariat. Thus, the capitalists are fewer while the proletariat class keeps on rising. What is he saying about petty bourgeois? See, what happens is because of the surplus value concept, the majority of the profits that are created, okay, even after paying the interest, even after paying the rent, is pocketed by the capitalist class. All right. So what happens because of this more profits coming into their bank accounts, they can buy more land, they can buy bigger machineries, they can buy or establish bigger organizations. So because of this, what happens? Not just the workers, even the middle class people like artisans, all right, who may have their own small handicraft industries, small shopkeepers, okay, who will be selling their own benches, or small capitalists who had their own industries but comparatively smaller to the rich capitalist class. Okay, they will be outdone by this rich capitalist class because they have more profits, they have more workers, so their production will be more. Plus, because of the profits pocketed, they can invest in new technologies, they can lead to mass production, they can help in mass production and selling that product, which will be better compared to an handmade product of an artisan. So the competitive value for the product produced by the rich capitalist through his organization and once produced by an artisan or by a small capitalist sold by small shopkeepers, the qualitative, the difference will be seen. So people will not mind spending a little bit more for a better quality product. Okay, a consumer is not going to consider whether the wages to the laborers are paid or no by the capitalist. He's only concerned with whatever I spend my money for, I get the value of my money. So if a bench is going to last for 5 years without any problems, I don't mind spending 500 rupees for it rather than investing 200 rupees in a bench which will not even last for an year. All right. So this economics is done by each one of us. All right. So because of this, what will happen? The product produced by the capitalist through mechanized processes may sell at a higher price but will have quality as compared to the ones produced by the artisans, the shopkeepers, and the small capitalists. So now they'll become jobless, they'll become unemployed, their businesses will close down, the small shopkeepers will have to close and lock their shops because they cannot compete with these so-called rich capitalists with their profits and with their monetary and the political power. They cannot compete with them, and these small shopkeepers, artisans, and the small capitalists will finally get thrown out of market. And finally they'll start realizing, okay, look, I understand, because even now I have to start working as an working class person. So now they will start understanding the problems faced by the working class, and even they join the ranks of the proletariat. So now what happens? Like I told you, a pyramid is created. Rich capitalist class, very small amount of people there. Majority, the petty bourgeois class, the shopkeepers, the small entrepreneurs are thrown out. Now they also join the proletariat class. So the bourgeois, the petty bourgeois class, which was like a shock absorber between the rich capitalist and the working class, becomes unemployed, and they start joining the proletariat class. So what is happening? The vacuum, the shock absorbers between the worker class and the capitalist class vanishes. Okay, it vanishes. And that shock absorber class, the petty bourgeois class, also joins the proletariat. So now what happens? Capitalists are fewer and fewer while proletariat keeps on rising. It keeps on rising. As capitalism keeps on growing, more and more workers come in close contact of each other and become conscious of their plight and start developing self-consciousness. Now what happens? Because of this selling, because the rich capitalist class can afford it, okay, they may sell their products in other countries also. So now the working class of other countries also start coming in contact with each other, and they start realizing, okay, listen, all of us are going through the same situation. We are suffering, we are getting exploited, we are putting in a lot of efforts and only for earning minimal wages, while the maximum profits are pocketed by the capitalist class. They keep on rising and our wages keep on reducing. All right, because if I refuse to work on a particular wage, there are 10 other people ready to replace me at the same wage or even lower wage. So now the workers start coming in contact with each other. All right, and this is when they start realizing that not just the people in England, people of France are also suffering the same. People all over the world are also suffering the same. That's why he said in the very first slide I told you that workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. In that chains I mentioned nation. This is what he's talking about, that the exploitation is going to be transcending national boundaries. All right, the exploitative class, or the one class which is exploiting the workers, is going to be the same. All right, so what is going to happen? The workers in whichever country they belong to, whichever nation they belong to, the workers will suffer through the same plight. All right, maybe their wages will be a little upper or lower compared to the normal wages, but they'll still be living through means of subsistence. So finally what will happen? The workers will start developing consciousness. They'll realize their existential reality, that listen, we are getting exploited. Okay, and this cannot continue. And finally, because of this, they develop their self consciousness and they realize the exploitative nature of the capitalist class, and the subsequent rise of the consciousness in the workers will lead to an inevitable class struggle between the two classes. And this is when the true consciousness is developed. The worker class starts realizing that listen, we need to change, we need to break the loose the chains of religion, of morality, of nations, etc., that is dividing us, and become together. All right, so workers of the world unite. And what happens once you unite? Class struggle will happen. The entire working class will come together and overthrow the capitalist class. This is the doctrine of your class war. So the class struggle will end with the victory of the proletariat class and end the class divisions and antagonisms. See, why were the class antagonisms present? Because there were two classes present. There was a capitalist class, or the bourgeois class, and the proletariat class, or the worker class. All right, but now class struggle happened. No, and because the class struggle happened, what did it lead to? The class war led to the class struggle ending with the victory of the proletariat. The majority wins. Capitalist class was like a top of the pyramid. All right, but majority was the proletariat class. So what will happen? Of course the victory of proletariat class will happen. Okay, and once proletariat wins, that means the bourgeois have been overthrown, the capitalist class has been overthrown completely. So class antagonisms, class divisions end, because now there is only one class, and that class is nothing but your proletariat class. So capitalist class has been overthrown. Capitalism is history. Capitalism has been negated. All right. So here the class divisions and the class antagonisms also end. All right, the state was basically, remember, it was a silent observer. I told you state had only two works to do: protection and welfare. All right. So basically that led to Marx saying that state is nothing but an executive committee of the capitalist class. Now the state was pro-capitalist. The capitalist class has been negated, has been defeated, and there has been victory of the proletariat class. So what will happen to the state? In the first concept, the dictatorship of the proletariat, the state apparatus will continue, because in state apparatus, what does it have? It has an army, it has a police force, etc. All right. So that state apparatus, Karl Marx says, should be kept for some time. Okay, it should be kept for some time. Why? Because even if there has been a victory of the proletariat class, the capitalist class is not going to give up so easily. They may try to come back. They may try to come back, okay, or stage a comeback. And in that time, this state apparatus of your police force, your army, should be utilized by the proletariat class to end, to stop violently if needed any what you can say, any case of capitalists trying to gain their earlier position back. So the state apparatus now will start helping the proletariat class to avoid the capitalist class from uprising again, or capitalist class from coming back again. All right. So that time the state apparatus will be used by the proletariat to curb, okay, to stop any sort of uprising of the capitalist class, if and when it may happen. So that time a state is required, because state is utility, here it has a police force, it has an army, they will go and fight. All right. And they will be the ones who will be subjugating, who will be defeating the capitalist class if they ever try to create an uprising or ever try to come back in the society. So state apparatus will be utilized by the proletariat for their own interest against the capitalist class. Now the class struggle happened, okay? Proletariat won, capitalist class is destroyed. Marx is smart enough to say, let the state apparatus remain, because the capitalist class, they've been used to dominating, they have been used to money. They are not going to give up so easily. So there is a chance that they may create an uprising. They may try to come back and gain power. So that time, he says, proletariat class, be smart enough to use the state apparatus, the army, because army is trained, police force is trained in handling violent situations. So use that apparatus. All right. So let the state survive till that point of time. So state for its apparatus of police force and as well as army is required. Now what happens? A society becomes dictatorship of a proletariat, because now there is no capitalist class. Okay. So it becomes a dictatorship of a proletariat. This concept of dictatorship of proletariat first appeared in the articles written by Karl Marx titled The Class Struggle in France. Okay, the class struggle will result in overthrow of the existing capitalist systems, and the means of productions will be in the hands of the proletariat class. So there is an overthrow of the existing capitalist class. It has been overthrown, it has been defeated in the class struggle. So the means of production, what will happen to the means of production? Marx is pragmatic. You see, when he says proletariat class, use the apparatus of the state, use it for any of the violent uprising that may happen with regard to capitalist class. Be smart enough to understand that, listen, human beings are going to have their own needs. Human beings are going to have their needs, whether only proletariat class, whether only working class is present in a society, they will still require the large scale industries, they'll still require a large agricultural lands for food productions, because population is going to rise. All right. So he says the means of production should not be destroyed. Rather, once the capitalist class is overthrown, okay, it is defeated, the workers will capture, or workers will take over the means of productions, that is your land, which belong to the capitalist class earlier, will now come with the hands of the worker class, the laborers themselves. So now they are, this is what is the social ownership, they will themselves own the means of production. Then the organization or the enterprise now will be owned by the workers together. So nobody will have higher share or lower share. It will be equal. That's why it's a concept of social ownership. And capital, the money, all right, also will be now belonging to the proletariat class. So the means of production will now go into the hands of the proletariat class. All right. Marx wanted to establish a communist society. So proletariat had to capture the political power too. All right. Now, what is communist society? Communism is after socialism. Dictatorship of the proletariat is the first stage. Remember what I taught you during Locke? Two treatises. With first a society is created and only then a state is created. So tomorrow if anything happens to the state, the society remains. Okay, you can just have a new government. So society remains permanent. State can change. All right. Same way. What he's talking about here is that, listen, first establish a society. The society is more important to Karl Marx than the state, because it is a society which has proletariat. It is a society which had the classes, not a state. It was the society which had it. All right. So he says, first let's establish socialist society, then think about communism. So the first treatise, like Locke, was society. Here also the first thing that you have to establish is a socialist society. Now, what is socialist society? Dictatorship of proletariat, wherein the means of productions will be in the hands of the proletariat. The state apparatus is kept so that if they require to fight against the resurging or uprising of the capitalist class, the state apparatus will be required. So this is the socialist society. All right, this is a socialist society wherein there is a dictatorship of proletariat, there is no ruling class. Okay, all the means of production are basically socially owned by the worker class. So none of us have a private right on that particular means of production. It is owned by each one of us equally. That's the meaning of social ownership. All right. So what happens? He recognized that the political rule was not unique to his theory, but he stressed that the real working class movements have this as a goal. That is what is mentioned in Communist Manifesto. See, Marxism, in the very first lecture yesterday, I told you that Marxism is an economic theory. Okay, the focus is on economics, not much on politics. All right, we study it because he is speaking about a state. That's why we consider him to be a part of your Western political thought, because he's mentioning the state. But more so, if you look at it, it's an economic theory. All right, but Marx was smart enough to understand that, listen, finally, political rule is also required. All right, because somebody will have to manage your law and order. Somebody will required to declare a war or to declare peace. Somebody will be required to make laws, to legislate, to implement those laws, and a judiciary will be required to adjudicate those laws. So this political apparatus is also required. Okay, because all working class movements, he said, always have political ambitions. Always have political ambitions. For example, look at your French Revolution. Napoleon Bonaparte. All right. He wanted to overthrow the monarchy. He did, but he established his own dictatorship. So any working class movement, any movement will definitely have political ambitions, okay, or a political goal to it. And Karl Marx is smart enough, realist enough to understand this. Okay, but his first focus is on creating a dictatorship of proletariat, in establishing the social ownership of means of production, in establishing what you can say social equality of all the workers. The state remains because the apparatus of the state is required for political control, as well as the state apparatus of army and police force is required to see to it that the capitalist class does not re-emerge. Okay, so basically he ends up saying that, listen, the basis of the socialist society will be to each according to his ability, to each according to his work. So now, because the state is only required for seeing to it that the re-emergence of the capitalist class does not happen, all right, the proletariat have established their a dictatorship, they have the means of production, so each one of us has social equality and economic equality. Only thing that is required now is to decide how does each one get his wages, because finally working class has to earn. All right, just by overthrowing the capitalist class, they're not going to fill their bank account with money. Wages will be decided by, to each according to his ability, to each according to his work. The amount of work you put in and the amount of ability that is required to do that work will decide your wages. So everything will be according to his ability, according to a worker's ability, and according to the work he puts in. This is how the socialist society will function. So simplistically put, class struggle happens, overthrow of the capitalist class has happened, dictatorship of the proletariat has been established, state apparatus is kept for some time so that the army and the police force may be required in case the capitalist class tries to come back to power again. Okay, but social means of production, land, labor, enterprise, organization, and capital has come to the hands of, or come into the hands of the proletariat class, the working class. All right, now how do you decide who will get how much wage? Simple. The rule established is, to each according to his ability, to each according to his work, to each according to his ability, and to each according to his work. The more ability is required for your work, the amount that will be paid to you will decide upon your ability and your work. But he understands that yes, we will have to talk about state, at least maintain a state during dictatorship of the proletariat. This society with dictatorship of proletariat, each according to his ability and each according to his work, means of productions are socially owned, is a socialist society. This dictatorship of the proletariat, okay, whatever I've taught you till now, this is a socialist society. All right, okay, we will just stop here for a second. Class understood socialist society? Shall I move to communist society? Anybody has any questions? Okay, Aditya, what's the difference between socialism and communism? Aditya, patience, patience, I'm coming to it. Okay, have you understood socialism? Have you understood socialist society? Dictatorship of proletariat? All right, then state apparatus remains. Okay, it remains in the socialist society, and means of productions come under social ownership. So each one of us has equal right on the means of production. And how are the wages decided? According to each one's ability and according to each one's what you can say, work that he performs. Akansha, socialist means there will be no private ownership. Of course, that is what socialism is. Liberty meant liberalism meant liberty, Akansha. So socialism is social, so it means social ownership, and social ownership definitely means no private ownership. So it itself is self-explanatory. Communism means most property and economic resources are owned and controlled by the state. No, Asif, that happened as a degeneration. Wait for some time, I'll tell you why that happened. I'm going to speak about the failure of communism. So I'll answer this question during that time. All right. You cannot jump to conclusions. Just wait. All right. Okay. You have a lot of questions about communism. So let's establish your communist society first. Then I can answer all your questions. So socialism is nothing but dictatorship of the proletariat where the state apparatus is still prevalent. All right. That is a preliminary stage. Okay. After the class struggle, just to bring about a little bit of normalcy back into the society, there is dictatorship of the proletariat or the socialist society is established. But that is transitional. See what I've written. According to Marx, socialist society is a society in transition. It's not permanent. Permanent is communist society. All right. So socialist society is a society in transition. It is going to give way to communism. The state was an instrument of exploitation in the hands of the capitalist class earlier. Okay. Now, with the overthrow of the capitalist class, the state will also eventually wither away. This is important. Till now, what did we speak about? Here I spoke about the class struggle happens, proletariat wins, dictatorship of the proletariat is created, but state apparatus is kept for some time, because under socialist society there is a chance that the capitalist class may try to come back. So a state apparatus was required, but that transitioning period has gone. All right, now is the final stage. The final stage is establishment of communist society. Okay, so now what happens? The socialist society, according to Karl Marx, was a society in transition. All right, because it was in transition, the communist society is the final goal. So you have to establish a communist society. So state was an instrument of exploitation in the hands of the capitalist class. I told you it was silent spectator to whatever was happening during your surplus value being pocketed by your capitalist class. See, state is an instrument in the hands of the capitalist class. So finally, with overthrow of the capitalist class, the state apparatus was kept in the socialist society to see to it that the capitalist class does not come back again. But now that period has passed. Okay, now that period has passed. The capitalist class has been completely demolished, completely negated. Now they're not coming back. So once they're not coming back, and the dictatorship of proletariat has been established, wherein, like Akansha question, does it mean no private property? Yes. Yes, because now all the means of production are owned by each one of us. Whether it is land, each one of us has a right on it. Whether it is labor, each one of us is going to work, all right, and going to get wages according to my ability and according to my work. So now there is no conflict possible, because as much as ability I have, as much as the work I do, I get the wages. So now there is no exploitation happening. Next, the the apparatus was basically the organization or the enterprises, large scale industries, small scale industries, whatever the capitalists own, now become social ownership. They are owned by the people, but because now there is no capitalist class, the state is only the army as well as the police force. So state is also not going to control your means of production. That is your enterprise. So who covers it? The working class. You and me cover it. So that is also becomes a social ownership. All right. Okay, I'm here. I'm here. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, let me continue. I'll answer all your questions. Don't worry. By the time I finish this, your questions will be answered themselves. Okay, so what happens? The state was basically an instrument in the hands of the capitalist class. The capitalist class does not exist. Everything, all the means of production, the social means of productions are now equal social ownership on it. So now what will happen? The state, the law and order machinery, the police and the army will not be required, because the capitalist class is not coming back. The transition period, the period wherein they could come back, has already gone. Okay, now everything has been settled. Dictatorship of the proletariat has been settled. The rule of wages according to ability and work has been settled. Each one of us has an ownership in the means of production. So nobody is up, nobody is down. There are no two classes. Everything is established properly. And plus, now the capitalist class coming back is an impossibility. So finally, the state, what was the state? Only the police and the armed forces are no longer required. So Marx does not even talk about overthrowing the state. He says the state will wither away. The state will vanish because it's not required. Means of production, workers handle. Large scale industries, workers handle. Everything is taken care of by the workers themselves. Now the capitalist class is never coming back. So there are not going to be two antagonistic classes. There is only one class, that is the working class. They are not going to fight with each other. So police is not required. Neither army is required. So the state, that was only the apparatus of army as well as your police force, will wither away. Class, this is very important to understand. It will wither away. You are not proactively destroying a state. The state itself vanishes because it's not required. All right, it was not required, so it withers away, it vanishes on its own. And what will happen? The class struggle will lead to a classless society. How? Capitalist class has vanished out, negated. Only worker class remains. Worker class has established their own ownership over all the means of production. So now it's a classless society. Only one class, working class, the proletariat class, as well as the withering away of the state. The state itself vanished, led to a stateless society. So what is communist society? Simple. A classless and a stateless society is nothing but your communist society. So in communism, there will be no state. All right, there will be no state. The state will wither away because everything is been in the hands of the working class. There are no two antagonistic classes, only one class. So now there is no class antagonism. So the society is classless. Everybody, each one of us is equal. All right. Plus, it's a stateless society because the state realized, the police force and the army, they gave up their jobs and must have joined the working class, started working on wages, because now there are no antagonistic class. Nobody is going to come and attack you. Nobody is going to come and threaten your sovereignty. It's the working class who's ruling in India, in US, in France, in England. And worker class have seen exploitations. Okay, they have seen what it feels like to be exploited. So these people, they will not be bothered about going and attacking or establishing political colonialism over anybody. No, the socialist class, the worker class, is going to be one which is peaceful. They're going to be only bothered with owning the social means of production, giving wages according to one's ability, according to one's work. That's it. So everything is peaceful, whether it is US, whether it is India, whether it is UK, whether it is New Zealand, this is Australia, it's peaceful. So the state will realize defense and protection is no longer important. So I have no work. So if I have no work, what is the use of me staying? So the state itself will vanish. So a classless and a stateless society will be created. That is your communist society. That is your communist society. So communist society is one which is classless, which is stateless. Private property will be replaced by common ownership. That's what Akansha asked me. Akansha, this is your answer here. Private property is gone. Okay, it's no longer required because there is no capitalist class to say ye mera hai, ye tera hai, ye mera hai, ye tera hai. There is no capitalist class. It's been overthrown. Now it's a classless society. So you and me both have equal rights on any means of production. All right. All of us have equal rights on any means of production, wherein the wages will be paid to us according to our ability and according to the work performed. So private property is abolished and it will be replaced by common ownership. And this is when a communist society is established. And this is also the reason why communism has been a failure. Do you think a stateless, classless society with social ownership or common ownership is possible? No, it's not. And that's the reason why communism never really established itself. All right. Okay, now let me check your chats. Okay. Communism means most property and economic resources are owned and controlled by the state. Asif, so now you got your answer. In communism, there is no state. That's why I told you, wait. In communism, there is no state. Communism itself means a stateless and a classless society. There is no private ownership also. Everything, everything is basically going to be a state wherein there is common ownership. That is when communism is established. All right. That's why communism as such never came, because it's not possible. A state is required. A passport requires, you need to travel to another country, you require a passport. The passport needs you to be having a stamp of a country that you belong to. And a passport shows your nationality. If I have a stateless society, how will I travel? It's a basic sense, no? That's why, please understand, Asif, communism means no state. It's a stateless society, it's a classless society. So state withers away. State is not required, state is not present. Okay, 1 second, like 1 second. Akansha had asked me, socialist means there will be no private ownership. Akansha, so you have understood that yes, socialism is social ownership. Remember that. It is social ownership. All right. So that's why there is no private property, because private property is removed, and everything, all the means of production, whether it is land, labor, enterprise, or your capital, everything is owned by all of us together. So there definitely there means no private ownership. Okay. Another question. 1 second. Okay, Akansha, India is which state? India was a welfare state. Right from the very starting, we had those, we adopted mixed economy. All right, because when India became independent in 1947, Akansha, when I teach you your paper two, you'll realize when we became independent, because of the Second World War ending, we got independence early, but the world was already divided into two groups. The Cold War, the capitalist countries led by US, as well as the communist countries led by USSR. Yeah, it was communist once, but I'll tell you why it failed. I'll tell you why it failed. Have a little bit of patience. Let me answer your first question, Akansha. Then I'll explain to you why USSR, even if it was said to be a communist, it was not communist. I'll tell you the reason why. Okay. Just let me answer your first question earlier. All right. So India, once it became independent, we we had fought for almost 200 years to gain our independence. Now we did not want to become a vassal state to either capitalist class of US or the communist class of USSR. So India took both, best of both, and we established mixed economy. Look at our 5-year plans that we started. Industrialization also started, plus agriculture was also focused on, because we were an agrarian economy. All right. So we were earlier a welfare state. The constitution created a welfare state. All right. But 1991, now we have opened up our economy. LPG era started. That, understand, when LPG era started was because Cold War had ended, Soviet Union collapsed, disintegrated. All right. And there came a country called Russia. Soviet Union does not exist now. All right. So the communist bloc was gone. So now we had to adapt to capitalism. We had to agree to liberalism. So that's why LPG concept came up. Liberalization, globalization, and privatization. So today, if you look at India, we are more of a capitalist economy, but we are welfare state. So remember this middle capitalism I taught you? The modern liberalism is what India is, welfare state. Tax the rich, give the money to the poor, take care of the poor, give them reservations, give them tax slabs so that they don't have to pay. So we are a welfare state. So we are the modern liberalism concept. All right. So India, Akansha, I hope I have made you understand what we are. All right.
Yes,
Today we
Miss.
are capitalism. We have capitalism, but we are a welfare state, modern
Welfare
capitalist
state.
state.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Berlin Wall. Yes, yes, yes. But that Berlin Wall is another issue. That is when I'll deal with Cold War, I'll go ahead with it. Okay.
Okay.
Next question. USSR was communist once. Akansha, now I'll answer you this question. Okay. Okay. Once communism is established, class, just last time I'm repeating. All right. Then I'll go to answer Akansha's question. Okay. A socialistic society. All right. Everybody has means of production. Each one of us has social ownership of means of production. State is still present because we want a state apparatus to see to it that if ever the proletariat, the capitalist class tries to rise again, we should be able to destroy that re-emergence. That's why state is present here, but all the means of productions are owned by each one of us, social ownership. And how do we get paid? According to our ability and according to our work. But this is just in transition. This is just in transition. The permanent structure is supposed to be a communist society, that is a classless society and a stateless society, okay, where there is no private property. Now, you all can understand having a stateless and a classless society is utopia. All right, there's always going to be a class. How much ever you try to establish a classless society, it is an utopia. It is not going to happen. There's going to be a dominant class. There is going to be a less dominating class or a exploited class. Plus, stateless society will create anarchy. And look at it, even today, countries like Kosovo or Palestine is the best example that they are actually fighting for a statehood. So if we had to establish a stateless society, nobody will be fighting for statehood. In that case also, look at India and China. Sino India. Okay, if it was supposed to be a stateless society, China is said to be a communist country, or now called as a socialist country. They would not be bothered about being not bothered about expansionism of their boundaries, but they are still talking about expansionism because they are socialist. State apparatus is present in them. All right, state is present in them. All right, and they are talking about political power. So you cannot call them communists because they are not stateless societies, and they're neither classless societies. Class exists, state exists. There is private property. Jack Ma is the best example of that. All right, so communist society is an utopia. That's why Marxism was not very successful in establishing all the tenets of what Marx already spoke about. Now, this is the question that generally asked: failure of communism. Why did it fail? According to Karl Marx, Marxism was only for those countries where capitalism was fully developed and where all its contradictions could be understood. See, Marxism was not targeting the new countries, okay? He was not concentrating on, say, India, China, etc. His focus was on the Western countries, the European countries of France, UK, etc. All right, where capitalism was already well established. I told you, liberalism starts, okay, or the motherland of liberalism is England, UK. So he said that, listen, Marxism was only for the countries where capitalism has been going on for a very long time. It has been deeply entrenched in that society. And that's why people are exposed to all its contradictions, to all the evils of capitalism have been exposed, and people are becoming aware that capitalism is exploitative. Okay, it is exploiting the worker class. So it will only happen when capitalism has been deeply entrenched and has been going on for a very long time. It has established its roots very well. Only then that the people will start realizing that, listen, capitalism is bad. Capitalism is nothing but exploitation. Marxism is against capitalism. He was against the entire theory of Marx is against liberalism and capitalism, while Mao in China was against feudalism. Even Soviet Union was against feudalism, the Bolshevik Revolution. See, feudalism. All right. So basically, Marx is looking at London, while the other Lenin, Stalin, as well as Mao were looking at some another countries. All right. So basically, because of this, what happened? Marxism, as such, the communism that Marxism is talking about, the stateless, classless society, could never be established. Okay, because Karl Marx was focused on Western countries. He was not focused on India or China. He was focused on European countries. Marxism's main enemy was capitalism, while in Maoism's major enemy was feudalism. Same with Soviet Union. Marx was opposed to the concept of Communist Party. He wanted the working class to develop true consciousness and understanding of their exploitation on their own. He did not establish communist parties. He said the worker class is smart enough to know how to go about it, and that's why they will be able to defeat the capitalist class themselves. They don't require a communist leadership. Okay, he wanted the revolution to be spontaneous and to be led by the people themselves. No communist party to lead you, people themselves. So all of us will lead ourselves, and the capitalism will be overthrown. Why? Because true consciousness has been developed. We have realized that we have been exploited, and all that anger is enough for us to come together and overthrow the capitalist class on our own. A communist party or a political leadership was not required under Karl Marx. But again, Karl Marx was theoretical. It was theoretical. Everybody used it to make use of it in the way it suited their political purpose. So Maoism, okay, Mao Zedong, China. When I teach you Sino-India relations, I'll be talking about Mao Zedong. Okay, Mao Zedong, who started this Maoism in China, had his own political purpose. Lenin in Soviet Union had his own political purpose. So Lenin believed that masses could not develop true consciousness themselves and required a communist party to do so. So what happened in Soviet Union, which was a feudal society, czars, if you have heard about, okay? Like UK had monarchy, there were czars who were present in the Soviet Union or the Russian society. Okay. So Russia was a feudal society where capitalism was just emerging. Hence, the revolution resulted in power going into the hands of the leaders of the Communist Party. And only socialist society could be established. Communism was never established. So what happened? What Karl Marx is speaking here, dictatorship of the proletariat happened in Soviet Union as well as in China. Okay, but state remained. State did not wither away like he wanted it to wither away in a communist society. A classless and a stateless society was never established, so communism never came. Soviet Union as well as China got stuck onto socialist pattern of society itself. All right, so they had a state which was present. The state remained. And finally, what happened? That state was led by whom? The particular communist parties. Communist Party of Soviet Union, Communist Party of China, who gave the political leadership. But as usual, complete power corrupts you completely. So what happened? Once the people of Communist Party in China as well as Soviet Union got a taste of political power, they did not want to let it go. They did not want to let it go. So now they became the politically dominant class. So even classless society was not established. And Communist Party started dominating everything. And finally, what happened? It led to totalitarian state. मैं बोलो सो कायदा. Whether it was Mao's Red Book or whether it was Lenin or Stalin, they ruled with an iron hand. Okay, Communist Party even today dominates. Is because of this reason, because state remained, political power came into the hands of certain people, they became the political class. So capitalists may have gone, but now new capitalist class with extra power of political power was created. So dominant class became the political power as well as economic power having class and the worker class. So classless society was never established. Plus, once these people got a taste of political power, they did not want to let it go. And that led to Communist Party dominating social, political, religious, as well as economic spheres of the society in China as well as in Soviet Union, and led to totalitarian state. I've taught you about totalitarian state when I taught you Hannah Arendt. I told you totalitarian state is a state where every aspect of your life is governed by the state. You do not have a private life. There is nothing called as private life and public life. Everything, every aspect of your life is controlled by the state. All right. So such totalitarian states came or were created because they never understood capitalism. Their fight was against feudalism. So that feudalism doesn't come back again, the state never vanished. The state continued. And the state continued under the wheel of Communist Party, who finally ended up creating two classes, the politically economically dominant class and the worker class like you and me. So a classless society was never created, plus stateless society was never created, because Communist Party wields all the political power. Thus it led to establishment of totalitarian states. And finally, when I teach you Cold War, I'm going to teach you glasnost and perestroika, which were the two concepts which were brought forward by Gorbachev. It led to collapse of Soviet Union. Okay, it led to collapse of Soviet Union and the communist countries of Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia, all of them. All right, like Akanksha spoke about Berlin Wall. Okay, East and West Berlin. East, that the wall which was created was overthrown. All right, all of this led to basically collapse of your communism as an ideology, because communism were led to be misinterpreted by whatever was done by the communist parties of those so-called countries. It was not what Karl Marx was speaking about. The countries that you see are were totalitarian countries controlling everything. And finally, when the pressure rises too much, it's going to burst. It's going to burst. And that is why total control of every aspect of the life of an individual finally led to collapse of Soviet Union and led to the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe also. Czechoslovakia, Poland, Berlin, East Berlin, and East Germany, etc. But I'll go in more into detail when I teach you Cold War. So don't worry. As of now, just understand this failure of communism, why it happened, because Marxism was against capitalism, Maoism, Leninism was against feudalism. Communist Party remained, so state remained. They became political power, ended up becoming totalitarian state, and finally led to collapse. Finally led to collapse. Okay, now I have to take the last concept of alienation. But before that, let me ask you, have you all understood? Aditya, I told you every country has adapted the Marxian ideology or the doctrine to suit themselves. All right. So basically, you cannot say, okay, this country is communist. They call themselves socialist now because even they realize communism was not possible. It was utopian. All right. So every country has used it for themselves. India has used it for ourselves. Yeah. We are a welfare state, but we are still a capitalist country. So each country, whether it is Venezuela or Cuba or China or Russia, each one of them has adapted the concept of socialism to suit their state. All right. I hope I've made myself clear here. Okay. Now just bear with me for the last part. Okay. Then we'll end with Marx. Marx's concept of alienation. Okay, the concept of alienation belonged to basically a young Marx and which was found in economic and philosophical manuscripts. Okay, he believed that exploitation will end when we destroy not just religion. Remember, religion is an opium of masses, and God. Religion is related to God. Okay, but exploitation will end only when an entire structure of capitalism itself is destroyed. So Marx was very focused on completely eliminating capitalism. Okay, his main enemy was capitalism, neither feudalism nor anything else, only capitalism. Alienation actually was caused by capitalism, which was basically dehumanizing the man. The true nature of man was social and creative, which was killed by capitalism. So Marx, young Marx, believed that, listen, if a worker is going to work out of 24 hours a day, if he's going to work for say 8 hours a day for his necessary labor, see what is required for payment of his wages, and next 10 to next 5 to 6 hours going to work for surplus labor to create extra profits for the capitalist class. He is working almost 16 hours a day, and if this worker is going to work 16 hours a day, 8 hours he's going to be sleeping because he's tired. He doesn't have any scope of life. He does not have any scope of enjoyment of life. Man is social. He wants to meet people. He is creative. That's why there was classes like artisan class, etc. But because he's been exploited, he's working so much for the means of livelihood, and he's so exploited by the capitalist class, it has led to dehumanizing him. He's become like a machine, working 8 hours for himself, next 6 hours for creating extra profits, and rest of the time goes in rest. So he has become alienated from himself. Okay, he has no freedom to do what he wants because he's controlled by the market forces. So capitalist has alienated, capitalist has also alienated true freedom himself, but at least the capitalist class has money to enjoy. Okay, they can at least enjoy, they can go on foreign vacations and at least have a break from the entire routine. All right, or have certain creative pursuits, because capitalist class also is busy making money. but they have money, so they can buy a little bit of freedom for themselves. But working class can't do that. They have to work 16 hours a day. So because of that, four stages of alienation were seen. Alienation from the process of production, which means it is production was basically what gave happiness to a worker, but it became so mechanized that man just became a cog in the wheel. See, if you make an earthen pot, okay, if you've ever tried making an earthen pot or something like that, okay, you will see it requires skill, and it is quite creative, and it is entertaining. All right. So a person creating a pot or metal or a utensil used to take pleasure in doing that work, okay, because he had the skill, okay, because he had a knowledge, he enjoyed doing it. But what happened, even if he was enjoying it, finally, better, because capitalists had more money, they could bring about mechanized processes, so new machines came up. And because of machines, the production or the creation of a waste or anything that was giving man happiness, okay, was destroyed. Okay, so he only became a cog in the wheel of the same. So it became a alienation from the process of production. He was also alienated from the product of his labor, because he had no clue how much effort he is putting and what the final shape of the product he creates will look like, because everything is mechanized. All right. So he could not take the happiness of the production, the creativity, he could not enjoy that. Neither did he have a final say in the final shape of the product. Plus, he was alienated from his own nature. Working long hours did not allow him time to pursue his own creative interest. Okay, so he became a dull person. All right, all work, no play makes Jack a dull man. Same concept comes here. All right, plus, only thing that gave him happiness was himself. He was again alienated from himself, estranged from himself, because neither could he enjoy his work, neither could he say that okay, whatever labor he has put in for 16 hours belongs to him, because efforts he put in is in the machine, and machine creates the final product. So he was not creatively satisfied, because he was working for long hours. He had no energy for his own creative pursuits, finally led to alienation of himself from himself. He was alienated, he did not understand what he is. All right. So does ending capitalism by means of revolution would finally leave a man full give a man full freedom to pursue and do things that is required for him, and not just for subsistence and necessities. So once capitalism is overthrown, Marx said there is a moral purpose also behind overthrowing capitalism. That once capitalism is overthrown, everybody owns the social means of production. Each one of us has ownership on it. Our ability and our work will decide our wages. The man will start taking interest in the production. He'll start taking interest in his work, because ability is going to decide your wages. You will put in more efforts, you will try to improve your skills. So what will happen? Man will get his social and creative spirit back. All right, because now he will be working in perfect freedom. He'll be working in freedom. He will be able to do whatever he wants to do and earn from it. Okay, so his hobbies will be what he earns money from. And because of that, his work will give him satisfaction, because it will not only be for subsistence and for bare necessities. So this alienation will go once capitalism is abolished. With this, we have completed your marks. Anybody has any questions? I think, Anjali, you have any questions? Ask me now. Anybody has any questions? Okay, okay, great. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, here again, I'm just showing you again. I have written down the pages, okay, that you need to refer from O.P. Gauba. Introduction to O.P. Gauba, that book, all right. Marxism is covered under pages 29 to 38 under the chapter of ideologies, all right, and theory of state. It's under the title called as class perspective. It's basically under the chapter titled diverse perspective of the state. Page number 212 to 217. All right. So if you want, you can read this. It is very succinctly and very nicely given. So you'll enjoy reading OP Goba. Okay. Let me come down. Let me scroll down to your questions. I can see one question earlier who had asked me this. Aditya, I hope I've answered your question. The difference between socialism and communism is only keeping of a state. Yes, because now socialism kept a state. Communism spoke about stateless society. All right, but that is utopia, like I told you. Okay, Akansha's questions I've answered. Asif's questions I've answered. Akansha's questions again I've answered. Anybody has any questions, or shall we stop here? Class, at least tell me, no, then we'll stop. I have no issues. We'll stop here. Nobody has any questions? Mansi, any questions? You can ask me. Aditi, Anjali?
Miss,
Anybody has any
Miss,
questions? Ha,
what is
Akansha, tell me.
Hello, Miss.
I can't hear you.
Miss, what is Fabian socialism? Miss, I can write in chat box.
Akansha, I will be teaching you Fabian socialism because, like I told you today, I have established that Marxist this thing concept is very difficult to bring into practicality. All right. So when I teach you socialism, there is a lot to be studied. Only Marxism is done as of now, Akansha. So I'll be teaching you Fabian socialism, not just Fabian socialism. There is Guild socialism. There is utopian socialism of Fourier or Robert Owen, etc. So have patience. I'll deal with it when I come to it. Understand Marx clearly, because once you understand Marx, then we can go to socialism.
Yes.
Socialism is an umbrella concept. All right, Akansha. So there are a lot of various concepts applied there. Like I told Siddesh also, that listen, each and every state applied socialism to suit their own requirements. All right, that's why there is Fabian socialism, then there is Guild socialism, there is revisionism, there is syndicalism. All of this is covered under socialism. So when I come to that chapter, I'll be dealing with everything in detail. All right, so don't worry about it. If you want, you can read through just in Goba. After you finish reading the ideology of Marxism, there is socialism. So if you want to read, you can read that, but I will be teaching you that in detail any which ways. So now that I'm leaving upon you, if you want to read, don't have to say thank you. It's okay. If you want to read Akansha, you can read. In your ideology, chapter number 2 itself in OP Goba, after Marxism, socialism is dealt with. In that, Fabian socialism is covered. So if you want to do it before I cover it, you have full freedom. I have no issues. All right. Okay. Anybody has any further questions? Okay. I don't think so. So we'll stop here. I'll see you next week. All right. Okay. I'll be sharing the PPT with you. Plus, please, please, please go through the OP Goba pages I have told you to. It will only help you understand capitalism as a concept better and why Karl Marx came up with this entire concept of Marxism, ideology of Marxism against capitalism. All right. Asif, thank you and have a nice day, you too. All right. I'll see you next week then.